Welcome to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Cooper Smith, a doctorate prepared nurse practitioner, and this show is about empowering you to live a radiant, healthy, and balanced life. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Jasmyn Quianna, spiritual teacher, speaker, and the author of Falling Madly in Self Love. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amy, for having me.
So, the title of your book, it's very powerful. What inspired you to write it?
I would say it was more so not necessarily inspiration, but like an awakening, like divine download type of situation where I had done all the things, checked all the boxes, built the career, the life, and felt miserable. And, like, how did I get here? How did it go so wrong when I had followed the steps to make it all go so right, so to speak? And then once I had that moment, that kind of breakdown, um, all of a sudden, all these things start happening, and the pieces to now what we have as the book came to me, and that's really kind of how it evolved.
So you were successful externally. You had it all. And but you just weren't aligned.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that happens a lot. A lot of us may kind of our self-worth is kind of tied to our success or our
Mhm.
achievement. And it doesn't always work out.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? What have you found with your learning?
So, because it is tied to, like, our worth is tied to success, like you said, externally, something external, that is essentially what I've discovered, anyways, to be the problem. Because who we are, our worth, value, all those things are independent of our achievements or, you know, accolades or the things we collect essentially. It's bigger than any of those things could ever describe. So once we realize that and start detaching from those things and realize that they're just a part of our human experience, that's what really shifted everything for me.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to look over a lot of your book, and you're just so transparent about your journey and your vulnerability, and it's just so relatable because so many of my clients and maybe myself as well, we get to that point where we are very driven and very type A, and we almost brag about it, and then it's there's something missing.
Right,
Yeah. So
right.
so you talk a lot about self-reflection and just really rediscovering yourself. So how can people do that?
So the first step is really to get is well willingness, I would say would be the very, very first
Mm,
step. Just being open to change, to be willing. If you were like, completely on the other end of the spectrum and feel like, well, there's no more hope, or why bother anymore, wherever you are, just being willing. But then beyond that point, I would say being honest, and not just in like a surface level, what you think people expect for you to say, but the things that you don't even want to say out loud, you're thinking in your head, but you're too scared to even let yourself say it. I would say start there. The thoughts that you have, like in the shower or right before bed, or that the embarrassing, like,
mm.
get honest with yourself first. And then once you start getting honest, that in and of itself will start bringing up all the things for the next step.
Yeah. And then what is the next step?
So once you get super honest, you started the question with reflecting, right? So
Mm,
once you reflect and honestly reflect, um, the next step would be to, most likely, for at least for me, it was I had to extend compassion towards myself, because that brought up, and then that step followed by forgiveness, because honestly reflecting, like 100, that radical honest reflection, that brings up a whole bunch of crap that you start to blame and shame and
mm,
guilt and judge and criticize, all the things for yourself, you start putting all of this stuff on you, and that's not the purpose of this, the experience, the journey, reflecting, getting honest. Like, that's not the purpose of any of it. It's really truly just to shine the light of awareness so that you can change it. That's it. And but a lot of times we get caught up in, well, if I didn't do this, then this wouldn't happen, and this would, going down that rabbit hole. But you just have to do your best to try not to go there. And even when you do, still extend yourself compassion during those times, because we're human, and they will happen.
Absolutely. And you use the word self love, the words. So, what is self love?
So for me, I even like to take it a step further, as you know, and call it absolute self love, which I talk about it in my book. It's defined by 12 pillars. But in summary, long story short, it's essentially unwavering, unshakable, unconditional, independent of any external factors or circumstances. Love for yourself, towards yourself, to yourself. Knowing that you are love. Love is a frequency. Love is, a part of your being, and that it is that you are love, you deserve to receive love, all the things love based, independent of, anything outside of you, just simply because you exist, just simply because you are.
Which is lovely. So, you describe the 12 pillars, to the steps to get there. Do they have to be done in order or is it individual?
Individual. So, as you know, since you've read quite a bit of the book, I really am about following your own individual guidance
Mm,
versus every single person following the same exact path, the same steps. I feel like that, at least for me and people that I've worked with, I feel like that's been a large part of the problem, is that one person, finds the thing or whatever that is, and it worked for them because they follow their own path. But then everybody else is trying to follow their path to find the thing because they're like, well, they did it this way, so it must work. Not, really taking the time to see that it works because it was their path that was for them. So it'll work for a few other people simply because, it's a part of their path too. But for the vast majority, it doesn't work because it's not a part of our path. So being able to, really step into your own path, your own steps, identifying that for yourself, like, that is key.
yeah, I can see like somebody who's a high achiever, who's used to being goal driven, that they might approach the path to self healing in the same method of, okay,
Exactly.
I'm going to do it like this. And
Exactly.
so I think it takes a lot for somebody to change from that mindset and do it differently.
Absolutely. It's been a journey for me. And like I said, it's like it's not just a straight path up and you reach a mountaintop and then you have no more challenges. Like, I definitely still have challenges. Um, but you're right. If you don't watch it, then you'll find yourself doing the same thing on your healing journey. That I did that too. Um, and I had to really, even today, still retrain the way I think, the way I move, all the constantly reminding myself of all the things so that I don't go back into that mindset.
Actually, just today I was reading the segment that you wrote where you found a text message where you had repeated
Mm.
yourself almost verbatim over a period of time, and that struck me as I found an old journal about my business or something, and I had written 5 years ago the same thing that I'm doing right now, and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
that's resonating a little bit. So we
Wow.
get stuck sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And at least I still kind of get frustrated every now and again, but back then, me repeating that pattern, like, I used to feel so much shame and so much guilt around that. Like,
Mm,
what's wrong with me? Why am I, especially as the high achiever, in that your value, your worth, that whole identity essentially being tied to what you are doing.
mhm.
So it would really create a lot of shame and guilt for me, which just created more stuckness.
Yep.
Basically, right?
Yeah. So when somebody finds themselves stuck, what is, well, you mentioned a willingness to change is paramount. Are there actionable steps that someone can take to kind of get themselves going?
So it's easier said than done, right? And, long story short, simply put, you just have to start.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, Jasmine, well, obviously, if I could just start, then I would have just I would have just started, right? So how do you start? And it'll be a little bit different for everybody, but figure out what works for you in terms of addressing the resistance. So for
Mhm.
example, a challenge that I've had is I've switched over from like being corporate full-time professional to entrepreneur is how to structure my business, my day, like what does my day actually look like, cuz I'm in control of all of it, right? So, how do I overcome that resistance and how did I get started? Basically, starting like the biggest goal or whatever that priority is, like waking up and jumping right on that immediately before my brain or tells me, all the reasons why it won't work or is stupid, or like my feelings start telling me we're too tired, we don't have the energy, or whatever the emotions come up with it before any of that crap gets to happen. Like the main priority, the thing that is creating the resistance, I do that as soon as I wake up, so it's done. And then that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day, because you've already had this major win before, the first hour or two that you've been up. And then that kind of just creates a domino effect throughout the day. Just That's just one example, but you really have to find that thing that allows you to overcome the resistance. So just jumping at it heads on before the thoughts, the feelings, anything, has a chance to get in the way.
Yeah. Do you think the resistance is related to fear?
Absolutely. And fear has all these different little subtle disguises, right? Because even anxiety, doubt, all those things, they're traced back to fear.
Hmm.
So absolutely, whatever anybody can name, most likely it still goes back to fear, right?
Right. And I think sometimes we feel maybe we're afraid of being successful even, and we might sabotage a little bit to, like, even though we're not consciously doing that, of course.
Right. That was me too. I've definitely worked with a lot of people that also feel that way, because whether it's fear of failure or fear of success, our body, our nervous system still views it as the same way, right? It's unsafe because it's uncomfortable, it's unknown, it's unfamiliar, it's all these unthings. But at the end of the day, what it is it represents not being safe for our body and our nervous system. So whether it's success or failure, it just seems like a threat to your entire being, your entire existence, basically.
Hmm. Yeah. So what's happening in our nervous system when we're experiencing that?
All sorts of things, right? All over the place. Like your threat system is sending off all these alarms, sending out all these different chemicals and activating all these different biological systems within your body, which is supposed to be in a healthy balanced response, is supposed to be temporary. But when we get in these places where we're completely out of alignment, like I was, and completely out of love with ourselves, then it goes from from temporary, acute, to now we're in this chronic state, and it's like this all the time. And then it has this domino effect of all these essentially harmful consequences, because now it's affecting organs and tissues and
Hmm.
all these other things, right? um but that is like on a system level, like what it looks like, and it's on a biological level. But then more so visceral, like what you can see, it might be sweating, it might be shaking, might be a fast heart rate, it might be headaches, the really bad tense headaches. And I've experienced all these things. It could be tension, your shoulders constantly being raised towards your ears. That's literally everything I just described that has been me.
Mm. All right. Well, we're going to pause for a break from our sponsor. You're listening to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Cooper Smith, and my guest today is Jasmyn Quianna. before the break, we were talking about falling madly in self love and some of the things that maybe distract us from that. So, something you said that kind of stuck with me, you had said that burnout isn't always about our workload or our lifestyle, but more about self abandonment and being misaligned. So, why do you think so many of us are just kind of out of alignment, maybe with our true purpose?
Great question. So it boils down to conditioning, programming, how we were raised, what we were taught, what we learned. Yeah, there's a nature component to it, but it seems like for the most part, it's just conditioning and programming. And
Mhm.
depending on, where you grew up or who you were raised by, that determines how deep that programming and conditioning goes, right? So that is really what, it's challenging to overcome things that been put in your brain since before you could speak, before you could talk, or walk or any of those things. And it's hard to kind of distinguish, okay, which one do I actually believe because I genuinely believe it versus which ones are kind of been, implanted from my parents or my teachers or, friends.
Mhm. Do you think there's a certain age, you know, or maturity that's required to start on this journey?
Absolutely not. I feel like the earlier, the sooner you start, the better,
Mhm.
right? Even as an infant, if you're teaching them, because we teach babies letters and numbers and
Mhm.
the colors, we're constantly teaching them all these different things. But very rarely, if ever, now that I think about it, have I heard anyone say that, they've been teaching their baby self love affirmations or teaching their baby
Yes.
how to respect themselves or teaching their baby how to honor themselves because from, very early, we pretty much kind of do the opposite with telling them that they can't say no, right? And that in and of itself is kind of like one of the basic skills to honor, protect yourself. Yes, there's times when they're saying no, where it's like a dangerous situation. And I'm not
Right.
referring to those, but you know what I mean. Like if they don't want grandma to kiss them, for example, that's a personal safety space, boundary type of thing. And we're literally
Mhm.
in that moment, of course, not on purpose, in that moment teaching self abandonment without even realizing it.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right. A lot of people don't think in those terms, especially when we're raising children. We're just more traditional and, you have to hit your milestones and this is how it's done.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So, so for boundaries, so you mentioned the child's boundary, but how do we, overachievers, develop our boundaries so that we can get on the right path?
Ironically, it's kind of the same. Like
Mm.
and I don't know about you or anybody else that's listening, but saying no became one of the hardest things to do. And until you actually sit down and consciously think about how many times in a day where your body, everything inside of you is saying, I don't have the energy to do this, or I don't want to do this, or my plate's already full, whatever the case is, but you just don't want to disappoint the other person or let them
Mhm.
down. Or for work, for example, you want to be the team player. You don't want to be the one person on the team that didn't stay late, or you don't want to be the one person on the team that didn't take on the extra project, or the one family member that didn't show up for the party,
Mhm.
those types of things. God forbid you stay home and take care of yourself, right? So just learning how to say no, because by default, every time we say yes to something else, we don't realize it, but we're essentially saying no to ourselves. So
Mhm.
checking in with self first and asking, okay, do I have the capacity to take this on truly, honestly, or is it time to say no? Starting with no is like the place for everybody.
I've looked in the mirror and just said no, just because, again, I'm a people pleaser. And so I found myself agreeing to do things that I didn't want to do. And so I just started, no, no, we won't be doing that today. And
Yes.
it's hard.
Isn't it? It's crazy. And I love that you said you looked in the mirror because that I practice in the mirror. No, seriously, I practice in the mirror too, saying things like that and setting boundaries specifically all the time. And me and my therapist, we would rehearse conversations in advance to set boundaries because you're right. It sounds simple, it sounds easy, but in men, they seem to do it with no ease. Um, but for women especially, it's the hardest thing.
Yep. Because we feel guilty, like we're letting people down, like you said. Yep.
Right.
So, is there a way that somebody could have healthy ambition that does not take away from the self?
Absolutely. And ambition is a part of being human, right? It's a part of our nature and who we are is to create things. So you definitely want to still have ambition and drive. That is not the takeaway and not the, the point of it all is to get rid of the ambition. It's to align it with your truth. That's where the power comes from. But when that ambition is misaligned and it's
Mm-hmm.
attached and associated with someone else's story and someone else's plan, what your whoever they is, your parents, your culture, family tradition, what you think you have to do because this is the only path to make money, like whatever that is for
Mm-hmm.
you, um, that is, you know, essentially what is the takeaway, not that we're trying to get rid of ambition but align it with our soul's truth, our heart's truest desires, basically.
Do you find that some people they know they're not in alignment now, but they don't know what healthy alignment would look like?
Yeah, and that's a space and place that I've been in, and pretty much I guess we all start there. Something's off, but you don't really know. Can you, like you said, you don't even have that vision of where to take it or where it could go. And that goes back to that honesty piece. And you might have to start just turn it into somewhat like a game and really tap into your inner child. Like maybe even if all those fails, ask people that knew you as a child, that toddler to 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old stage, and ask them, what did you used to like to do? What did you used to
Mm-hmm.
like to watch, to play with, all of those things? And a lot of times that will give you a clue because that typically for most of us anyways, that's the time before the conditioning and programming, really took effect and set in, so you're closer true to your truth at that phase in your life more so than any other phase. So that can give you clues too if all else fails. But just start playing with different things that you wouldn't typically do, like going to do fun things, maybe art, painting, or pottery, or I don't know, a race car stuff. All doing all these different little things will then to start kind of get your juices flowing to see, okay, what do I actually enjoy in life? What do I feel like is fun? What lights me up? And that kind of opens you up to figure out, okay, what does it actually look like for me? Because some of and I was in this place, I was so burned out and overwhelmed and covered up by all of the mess that at one point I couldn't even see it either, completely disconnected. And that is a part of the nervous system safety mechanism too, is like numbing yourself out because it has gotten so painful. So that's not that's just another safety mechanism. So you kind of have to talk to yourself like a child and coax that child back out to
Mm-hmm.
figure out, okay, what do we actually want for ourselves?
Yeah, I love that you're rediscovering your inner child and that joy and that fascination that children have, that sometimes as adults it gets kind of blunted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of fun. You get to do fun stuff on your journey to self-discovery.
You know what, Amy? I hadn't even looked at it that way. Because I'm always thinking about the heavy things that come up.
Mhm.
But you're right. No, that I love the way that you just put it because it really has been a journey of discovery. And I've learned so many different things about myself that I've shocked myself actually. So you're right.
Oh, the good part of it. So we're almost out of time, but how can people find out more about you and find your book?
So I am you can find me, my handle is Jasmyn Quianna on all platforms, but you can find me over on Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can also find me at jasmynquianna.com. And my book is sold on Amazon. So you can get the ebook, Kindle, or paperback, or Audible is where the audiobook is housed. Everything is available on Amazon. So I actually have a freebie for a free gift for your audience, where I'm sharing the first chapter of the book. So they'll be able to get the PDF, and then for those that prefer audio, they'll get the audio chapter as well. So that'll be available,
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
of course.
All right. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. Do you have insights from this show? Send me an email at radiantpodcast2025@gmail.com. Check out past episodes on our YouTube channel, and we're also featured on Apple and all your favorite platforms. I'll be back next Saturday morning at 7:30 with more expert insights and practical strategies to help you live a radiant and healthy life. Until then, here's to your best life.